Welcome to Mocha. My name is Brandy. I've been working at Mocha for 10 years now as a teaching artist, and it's a fabulous place to work, so congratulations.
My name is Danielle. I've also been working as a teaching artist at Mocha for about 6 years. Congratulations, and I hope you enjoy working with our team.
Mocha is the Museum of Children's Arts. It's a nonprofit organization that's been serving the Oakland community since 1989. At Mocha, we believe that everyone is an artist, that all people possess the abilities to think and learn creatively. We feel strongly about the power of creativity to spark curiosity and to develop new ways to engage and interact. The mission of Mocha is to ensure that the arts are a fundamental part of the lives of all children through hands-on learning and art experiences, arts training and curriculum for educators, and advocacy for the arts. To be a strong teaching artist, we emphasize these 4 ingredients that serve as the foundation of what we're trying to accomplish here at Mocha.
The 4 B's. Definitely be organized. Your schedule is set for you. Get here early. In the beginning, especially when you're a new artist, give yourself time to learn and make sure that your pencils are sharpened. It may not, the person ahead of you may not have taken the time to do that. Know that you are responsible for your own supplies. So be organized.
Be informed. Review that lesson plan. Go over it. Make sure you've practiced it at least once or twice. Make sure you have samples that work for you, that you know what they mean or represent so that you can talk about it in an educated sort of way.
Absolutely. Be on time. There is nothing worse than someone that doesn't arrive on time. It shows that you really aren't being responsible. So definitely be on time. Keep track of the time as you go through your field trip. Make sure that you end on time. People have to be places. So be responsible and be kind to others and keep track of your time.
Be prepared. Make sure that you have all of the supplies that you need set up in an organized way for you. How does it work best for you? Like Brandy said earlier, sometimes other artists before you won't have put all the materials back where they need to be, or will have forgotten to let somebody know that we're out of a supply. Make sure that you have enough time, be on time, and make sure you're prepared so that you have all of the materials you need.
Ultimately, it is your responsibility to arrive on time, be prepared, and lead quality lessons and clean up afterwards. Now we will talk about how to have a meaningful and successful field trip at Mocha.
So introductions at the beginning of the field trip. What's your process?
I bring my students in, my teachers in, get them settled in, and introduce myself. Just very simply saying who I am, what I do, how long I've been here, where they are, and what we stand for. What does Mocha really mean?
I like to get to know the audience. Have they been to Mocha before? Have you been to a museum before? And at a museum, what kind of rules are in a museum? Should we run? Do we touch the artwork on the walls? Really get to know the space.
I like to encourage curiosity and conversation while we're working. We don't have a quiet space here when we're working. We don't get too rowdy, but encourage students and teachers and myself to talk with everybody. Find out what's happening. What are we doing? What are we working on? How are we proceeding? Are we being successful? What are our issues? That sort of thing.
Nice. So we just talked about the rules that we have here at Mocha. How do you manage your space in your classroom?
When I go into my classroom, I like to first identify a couple students who can help me out that day. I change it around depending on how many classes I'm going to be with them, because they really like to help and feel important when they can help pass out materials like paints and brushes, making sure that they're responsible for their materials. I also like to make sure that they know there aren't any mistakes. If they don't like the way something's coming out, talk to me about it or talk to a friend. See how you can change it and turn it into what you want it to be.
I totally do that too.
Yeah, definitely. Also, make sure you're paying attention to the time. I am notorious for going over time, so I've really cracked down on making sure that we can be as successful as we can in the time allotted. We have time to set up, clean up, and create our art. Rules in a classroom are important to help set the tone of what you're going to be doing with the students. It helps them to realize that this is a fun, exciting environment where they're going to be learning stuff, experimenting in a safe and structured sort of environment.
Allowing for some freedom, some organic fluidity in your classroom, but also establishing an environment of safe learning is really important to make sure that you can allow for a lot of freedom, but also maintain control at the same time. Because there's a lot of moments where you have so much fun doing this and it gets super loud, but you need quick comebacks and quick control. Getting into a classroom is very organic. Everybody has their own style, and I really just like to kind of feel the class and see what I can actually establish during that day. I never ever go into a class like, these are the rules, you have to do this. That does not lend for a very fluid classroom.
I agree. Oftentimes we'll see how it goes in the class, and if there's a kid who's doing something that maybe they shouldn't be doing, we'll talk about why they shouldn't be doing what they're doing instead of telling them that they're wrong or that they're not doing what they're doing. If they start to run, be like asking them questions. Is that a safe thing to do? Do you think that's the best way that you should be behaving? Are you being your best self? All right, Brandy, they're here, they're seated, they're ready to go. Now we're at the art part. What do we do?
We're gonna investigate the theme. I've already prepared ahead of time the whiteboard with my guiding questions. So I know to ask them, what is clay? Where does it come from? Have you worked with clay before? Can you tell me about clay? And then we kind of dive into exploring the different parts of every field trip that we have here.
So now it's time to demonstrate the project.
Absolutely.
We're gonna work on it, get our hands dirty, showing them the basic steps of our project. Sometimes it might be a step-by-step, and we might have to go from, if we're doing, say we were gonna do masks, we might wanna show them how we draw our shape to make a symmetrical mask and have everyone do it and then move on to the next step. Sometimes we don't need to do step by step, but we want to demonstrate at least a little bit to get those creative juices flowing.
Absolutely. And when it's time to actually start the art making, share the wealth. Have people in the room help pass out the art supplies, engage the students in this process. Teachers and volunteers that are in the room really help pass out those supplies.
Nice. You also got to work the room. Don't stand at the front of the class. You're the teacher, yes, but you also need to be an active participant in the project. Walk around, talk to those students, get them going, make them feel confident, and encourage their abilities.
When that field trip is done, or even before the field trip is done, you clean along the way. Never leave all of that mess just for you to clean up later. Kids actually really enjoy picking up the classroom as they go along, and make sure that you reinforce that. Say, hey, you guys, I see that you've had a lot of fun here, but could we put those pencils back in that container right now? And let's have some good times.
Let's take this piece of art, for example. How would you engage your students in talking about this artwork? The way I would talk about it is I would ask simple questions. Tell me about your artwork. Or, I really appreciate your use of color. Tell me about your color choice. What would you want to change if you could? Or what could you add? Remember that we're trying to really help these students in understanding and learning and confidence when they create their project. Remember again, mistakes are proof that they're trying.
So the elements of art are a big part of the Mocha culture. How do you bring up the elements of art in your classroom or within your field trips?
So when we're starting a project, we usually talk about what the different elements of art in there, what kind of lines we're using, shapes, that sort of thing. And then as the students are working, I go back and individually, I'm constantly circling around my classroom, moving through, seeing what each student is doing. And I like to try and point them out to them, asking them, hey, what do you think you're using over here? What kind of element of art is this over here? What kind of textures or colors are you using? That kind of stuff to really get them engaged so that they're thinking about it and they don't even know that they are.
That's the best way. Not even realizing that they just learned. Super cool. So how do you approach value judgments when you are talking about art within your classroom?
I like to try and steer away from using words like good, bad, I like it, I don't like it, or I just love it, you're doing such a good job, it's beautiful. Come up with concrete reasons why you like something. If you want to point out an area of the picture that you like, it could be something like, oh, you really were listening when we were going over foreground, midground, and background. I can really see that you've placed these items in the front, the middle, and the back. Talk to them about what they've done in their picture that relates to the things that we've been talking about. How do you handle that?
I like to use very specific language. I'm like, oh, when they say, oh, I like this or I don't like this, well, what didn't you like about it? Could you be more specific? And that really helps guide and pull out their language and encourage them to create their own style of learning.
I agree. And if they didn't like something, talk to them about how they could fix it to turn into something that they do like. What could they do to change it so it becomes something that, instead of a part of their picture that doesn't work for them, something that could work for them.
Absolutely. Any mistake that they see is an opportunity for change.
Exactly. So Brandy, do you think there's ever a time where you could use value judgments?
There are some students that you can see they just need that little boost. And so I usually go over to their artwork and I'm like, oh, wow. And I'll say something like that. Even as a teacher, I slip on occasion and I'll say, oh, I like your style. And I'm like, I can be more specific as well. So everyone is growing with this process. But to really point out some kids that need it, a lot of kids just need like an overall, like, you guys did a great job. I enjoyed your styles. I really enjoyed your use of color and shape. But yeah, sometimes it is necessary for sure. So the reflection process post field trip, how do you engage that conversation?
So it is a hugely important part of the field trip process or in-class teaching process. I feel like they need to be able to reflect on what they've created, how they've created it, see what other people are doing. Because a lot of the times you're so focused on what your work is, and maybe the person next to you or on the other side of you, but it's nice to see what people across the room have created. I like to, depending on time, how much time we have, a lot of time we'll do a gallery walk, where I have my students stand up quietly, sort of snake around the classroom, looking at all the pieces, and then sit back down. And then we'll have a couple people raise their hand, and I'll ask them, what did you see? What kinds of things were you looking for? What had we learned about the project? Did you see anybody who captured, or any pieces that captured those feelings or ideas?
Nice. Do you ever do like a pair share where you kind of pair people up?
Yeah, if there's not a lot of time and we don't have time to go around the classroom, we'll do that a lot, where they'll turn to somebody next to them and talk to each other about their picture, looking for those elements of art, trying to find them, not using words like I love it or I like it, trying to find concrete reasons why it was successful.
Do you ever utilize like the all-out share where everybody holds up a piece of artwork and things like that? So how do you engage that process?
So a lot of times I find that one to be a little bit more difficult, quite honestly, because it gets a little bit more raucous and loud and out a little bit crazier. But if we're doing that one, we'll just have them hold it up and then talk to the people around them within talking distance. So we're not shouting across the room at somebody else. We'll have them show them off. That's if we have very, very limited time left and we still have to clean up. And we'll look at them. Same kind of idea, pointing out things that worked in the picture, things that relate to the lesson, what was successful.
Reflecting questions. Teacher must help guide and focus the process. Ask students to begin a sentence with, I see, I notice, I wonder. What was challenging about this project? How did you work through those challenges? What was successful in your artwork? Were you surprised by anything? In what ways did you take a risk in your work? If you did this project again, would you do something different? What do you want to try next time? What did you learn?
So we're all done. The project's done, we've reflected. What do we do now?
I like to give an appreciation and make sure that I'm very excited to work with these students. It was so much fun having them here. I learned a lot. I felt that we had a really good time together, and even do like a little tiny appreciation, reflection, feedback to me as well. Like, how can I do better next time? What can you tell me that you enjoyed, or maybe that you didn't enjoy, that I could change in my practice?
Do you ever offer to take a picture?
Absolutely. I love that. Like when the students kind of surround, like, oh, can I take your picture? Can I take a picture with you? Absolutely. And I think group photos are really fun. It helps establish a nice culture as well that they can bring back to their school and say, look, we did a Mocha field trip.
Now they've left. Where does that leave us?
Hopefully, you've taken the time to clean along the way so that your job at the end of the day is minimal. But sometimes you are left with like a printmaking field trip where you have lots of those glass plates to clean. So you need to take your time. Make sure that it gets returned into the boxes and throughout the classroom in a way that the next person that comes in isn't scrambling about trying to find everything. So take ownership of this space. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful culture here. Artists really help contribute to that, so don't be lazy in your learning.
Yep. Make sure your brushes are washed, the papers are changed on the table, the floors are swept, trash has been taken out, leaving it the way that you found it for the next person.
Or cleaner.
Exactly.
That's my thing. So Danielle, there's varying ages of field trips, and one of them is the preschool field trip. Can you talk about your process with that?
So the preschoolers are so cute. They're so tiny and so excited to be here. But it can be a little bit crazy because they're all over the place. One of my main things to do is to always start them off sitting in a circle or in rows and reading them the book that goes along with the field trip. It kind of helps center them, get them focused, kind of get an understanding of what we're going to be doing. Then I take them around from table to table and show them the different projects that we have set up. We go through the entire process at each table. It helps them, and it also helps the adults that are with them to understand what's supposed to be happening at each table. Then once we've done that, kind of get them set up, maybe some smocks on because they're a little messy, and get them started. One of the main things that I try to get across to the parents who are helping, because we definitely need some parent help with those field trips, is that it's okay if they don't follow the process that I showed them. As long as they're experimenting and exploring, that's what's important for them at that age.
When we're in the classroom, it can get really rowdy. It can be a lot of fun. What are some techniques that you use to get back to the class?
So I established some hand signals. We use hand signals a lot. We use the me too. If you're agreeing with somebody, if somebody's talking, that we use this one a lot. We also, instead of if you're getting super excited and getting really loud about it, we try and do this a lot in my classes. It cuts down on getting the kids back in line and quiet again. There's some call outs that we'll use. I'll do class, and they'll yell back, what? That tends to get them quiet. What do you like to use?
I use a lot of kind of almost meditation practices.
Okay.
I'd say in a very soft voice, if you can hear me, touch your nose. If you can hear me, touch your ear. If they're younger, I'll say, if you can hear me, give me some bunny ears, something like that. And then they finally kind of calm down for a second. I'm like, everybody just put your hand on your heart and your belly. Let's take in a nice deep breath. And if I want to get them a little bit louder, I could say, let's make it sound like the ocean. And it really kind of sets a different tone for the class and resets the class in order to move on to the next lesson.
That's awesome. I love that.
I know.
Nice. I want to do that.
It's really helpful. Sometimes like I'll use a chime too, but I find that like that's a lot of teachers use it to have the kids like put their heads or their hands on their head like this, and I'm not a huge fan of that so much. I'll use it occasionally, but I'm a big fan of if you can hear me, do something. Because it automatically, like, to do this, you have to drop your pencil.
That's
so
true.
it really kind of engages their kind of understanding of like, oh, I'm supposed to be listening now. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I do think it's important to talk to the teachers too and see what they use in their classroom.
Yeah.
If they have a quieting technique that works particularly well for the class, that doesn't necessarily involve hand motions or hand movements.
Yeah, I think it's really good to kind of engage the teacher as well, because then they're like, oh yeah, I can be part of this process too.
Well, because we want them to be part of it. I want them to be creating as well.
Yeah, so they can take those skills that they've learned here and bring them back into their classrooms,
Exactly.
creating Mocha culture
Everywhere we go.
everywhere we go.
One thing I think is really important before, if you're new to teaching or you haven't done it in a while, or it's something that you're a little bit nervous about, practice the projects. Don't go in cold. Make sure that you have practiced it yourself. If you have a kid or you know a couple kids, have them practice it with you so you can see where the issues might be or where pitfalls might be. Also know that nobody knows you haven't done it before or that you haven't done it in a while. If you come in and project confidence, they're gonna think this is your 700th field trip. They're not gonna have any idea. Just be confident in yourself. Know that you can do it.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half. You got it under control. There might be some hiccups, but that's okay. Have your supplies organized in a way that makes sense for you. How you put your supplies on the table might not work for me, but that's okay. I need to know how I'm doing it, and that goes back to doing the project beforehand so that you know what you're gonna need every step along the way. Because there's nothing worse than teaching a class and realizing you don't have something that you needed and then floundering around to get it.
That's a good word, floundering. I know when I first started teaching in general, before I actually arrived at Mocha, I would shadow teachers, and I wanted to be a sponge. I wanted to learn anything that I could and best practices within the classroom. And you can actually see yourself kind of mirroring and picking and choosing things that will work for you in your particular style of teaching, because everyone is different. It's a very fluid process. And I'm going to go back to really working on the project and knowing. And what I do is when I actually demonstrate or make a sample, in the back of my head, I am always thinking like, okay, how am I going to explain this? If this was difficult for me to do, how am I going to teach a third grader how to do this? So I'm really always having that mind frame the entire time I'm learning it as well. So, and allowing for mistakes as well. Like if one field trip can go great, another one you'd be like, oh, I should have said that. And just know that you're going to grow as a teacher and allow for that growth.
I like what you said about shadowing people. Our culture here at Mocha is so open that if you ever felt like you wanted to do that, you could just talk to any of the teachers, and I would love to have people come into my classroom. It's an extra set of hands, and it kind of shows them what we're really doing and what the environment is. I would be totally open to that.
Yeah, and it's a really good thing to know that Mocha is not only here at the museum, we're everywhere, and to see what kind of reach that we do have and impact we have in our community. When I first started at Mocha and I started doing field trips, each field trip became almost like part of my portfolio of teaching practice. And it really helped build my teaching muscles. And I still to this day, I remember using language and words, and I brought them into my classroom later on, and it really helps strengthen your confidence and ability to communicate with kids, communicate with teachers, other teachers, and just also be a stronger artist yourself.
By sequential instructions, what we do is we set up a system to tell students how to go about these art processes. For example, clay. We roll into a sphere. Give me a thumbs up. Stick your finger into the clay and show me your cave. Now, pinch around the side. You can use whatever method is easier for you, but make sure that the children have that understanding of your sequence.
One of the things that we specialize at Mocha is kind of weaving curriculum as well as like math and science within our field trips, within our curriculum that we've actually written. One of a really good example is actually the clay field trip, where we're talking about shapes and spheres and cubes and things like that. And when I actually start dividing out the clay, I actually do like a multiplication lesson with the students.
Nice.
So I'll actually divide the clay and be like, okay, so how many students do we have in this class? I have 6 pieces here. Is that enough for the class? And then we go and we keep cutting the clay. And as we go through, they've actually learned to multiply 6 by 8. And they don't even realize that we've just integrated math within their art curriculum. Then of course you have geometry as well with the actual 3-dimensional shapes. So it's really cool, and teachers love to see that. Classroom teachers that come to Mocha, they're like, what? We were just talking about that in kindergarten, 2D versus 3D, and you just helped our class so much. So it's a really important part of our culture here. It is important to incorporate elements of art in everything that we do, because it is the foundation that will help students, if they want to learn art more later on. It helps really establish a basic understanding and work on their confidence, like, oh, I know that line, I can make a zigzag line anytime, and it's really great to see their confidence build over time.
I think it also relates to other areas of their life as well. They'll use things like lines and shapes in math and in science. Color, form, value, all of these things, they're all parts of their daily life. They just don't know that. Brandy, I love your color theory board here. Can you tell me a little bit about what you have on here and why you have it on here?
Absolutely. Before I start any field trip or any class, I make sure that I've established my boards. It's a really good tool to help me keep myself on track, as well as the students engaged in their learning process. One of the things that I start out with is a nice, big, bold example of what we're going to be learning for the day. So today is about color theory. The next is our goals. What are we going to be doing today? We're going to be exploring color. I always have a running vocabulary list. I like to add on words as we go through this process and make sure that at the end of the class, while we're doing our reflections, that I say, oh, you know what, let's use some of these words while you're talking about art today. Then I have my guiding questions. Guiding questions are really important for me as well, to make sure that I'm on track and on task. And if any students like to read the questions out loud, that's another thing to engage the students, and it helps them keep engaged in the process. I also have my visuals examples up here. Not only are they really colorful and bright and fun to look at, but they help the students kind of understand what we're actually doing for the day. I don't like to put too many examples up, because then the kids tend to feel intimidated if their example is like a teacher example. Then they're like, well, I can't do that. But if you do like one thing or 2 things, it's kind of nice to see that up there. Then I go and I do the process of the day. So we're going to start here, this is the next step, and here's the next step. So if any students have gotten lost along the way, they can always refer back to the board and catch up. Also, always put your name on the board, just so that they can always refer back to you as well. And I like to add little graphics to make it a lot of fun in the classroom.
Nice. It looks great. Love the colors.
Thank you. This has been a really fun process. I hope you guys enjoy being a Mocha artist. I love being a Mocha artist. It's the best job ever. What do you think?
I agree. It's so rewarding for me personally, and just to see how excited all of the kids get when they're working together, it's pretty fantastic. I couldn't ask for a better job.
Absolutely. Good luck. Have fun.